I think that was the remarkable thing. I mean, like I remember you and I pushing away from these microphones at the end of some of these podcasts, and we'd be like, it's so easy.
Right.
Like what they're doing is so easy. And the hard part is the volume, right? But if you look back on a lot of them, they all had plenty of leverage in place to deal with the volume. But the volume was coming from one or two very basic activities, and then they just scaled it. You know, it's this discipline got me to here. I continued that discipline, got leverage, and it got me to here.
Yep.
You know, and it. I know it was that simple, actually. You know.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. I am Bryan Lovell here, as always, with the amazing co-host, Mr. John Jones. And so, hey, listen, over the last couple of weeks, we hope you have enjoyed the top producer series that we've done. I think we've done about 8 of those. And John and I just figured we'd spend a little bit of time having a conversation amongst us, talking about what were some of our biggest takeaways from those top producers. Because, John, when it boiled down to it, they pretty much all said the same thing.
Yes, they did. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, you look back at branch managers, loan offices that have done this 20 plus years, and it's not the shiny object.
Yeah.
It comes down to the two, three things, the key things that they all seem to
over time with consistency, right? Yeah, I think you bring up that shiny object thing, and I think a lot of times what people do is that shiny object, they spend more time working on that shiny object, getting it off the ground, getting it over the finish line, whatever it is, that if they would have put that same amount of effort into the basics,
yeah,
they probably would have gotten some bigger results.
People in real estate, people in mortgage, we all try to shortcut the system, right? Of course. We want to jumpstart something easy. We want to bypass needing to get a referral from an agent.
Yep.
We want to go consumer direct. So we chase that opportunity thinking that that's going to, be a plethora of leads, and we're going to, close thousands of deals that way. And it just, over the years, we've done this. I've been in this industry 25 plus years. Don't want to date myself, but it goes down to your core basic 3 things.
Yeah, because
it's crazy.
So the 3 things in no particular order, and I just figured let's just say what they are, and then we'll go through and break them down. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
So the 3 things that we took away.
These are the must-dos, by the way.
These are the must-dos.
If you want to be successful, and I think this translates right over to real estate, right? And probably any sales that you are involved in today. Yeah. These are the 3 things.
Yeah, 100%. If you're in any sales, it's based on a referral.
Correct.
Getting a referral. So here are the 3 things. The first one is picking up that 1,000-pound phone and making some calls. That's the first one. We'll get into that. 2 is a lot of those folks that we interviewed from that, they do a lot of networking.
Yep.
They're involved in some networking groups, some business groups, things like that. And then the third one is your database is worth $1 million. The bigger your database, the more volume and the more opportunity that you're going to get out of it. So, John, what do you want to break down first?
Let's go right with the phone.
Right with the phone.
There's just the phone strategies that you have to have and put in place to be successfyou're
Yeah, I think the big thing is, one of the things I took away from that group is they all had somewhat of a plan with the phone. So, right, everybody's going, oh, well, duh. Well, the duh isn't, yes, the plan is to pick up the phone, but they all had a plan for who they were going to call and what their message was going to be. It had some intention, to your point, to it. And so I think the first thing is you got to identify, who do you want to call? I think in our business, let's just talk loan officer life for a minute. Mm-hmm. We have 2 primary customers, right? The first one is our real estate agent. The second one is our borrower. And I think one of the mistakes a lot of us make in this business, I got 3 fingers pointing back at me when I point at you, is we focus primarily on the referral partner part, and we forget how much business is available in that past client database as well. And we tend to only want to work on that like in a low rate market when it's going to bear a lot of refi fruit.
Right.
But I think that there's a lot of other fruit that can be born out of that relationship. If you keep in touch
Yeah.
With your past clients, they're going to refer you out to their friends and to their family.
Look, no matter where rates are at, if you've been in this business any length of time, rates have been double digits. When I started in the business, rates were at 8.5%. People always need money. Money always sells. For whatever the reason, folks are always looking to do stuff. So interest rate doesn't always mean whether or not somebody's going to refinance. People want to put children through college. They want to pay off consumer debt. They want to buy a second home. They may want to buy an investment property. So if you're constantly working your database, your past client list, and reaching out, you're going to find that they're going to be like, hey, you know what? My wife and I, we were just visiting a place in North Carolina. Let's bring up the mountains, because all the folks from Florida we know are now moving where? They're moving to the mountains in the Carolinas somewhere, in Tennessee.
Yeah, they're buying second homes, vacation
so
properties.
if you're in contact and keeping that open line of communication, they're going to be like, you know what? Let's go ahead and move forward with that.
Yeah, and I think where we're short-sighted as loan originators a lot of times is we only think rate and term refi.
Absolutely.
But you just named off a slew of things that you could do with a cash out, and people are going
Rate is irrelevant when people have the need. Rate
Correct.
does not matter. I will take 3% that I have today, and you'll give me 4% if I can buy that second home, because that's what's important to me and my family at this time.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think, it's important to have a plan. A lot of people talk about, and we do too, about grading, a database. So when I think of plans in terms of who am I calling, we talked about that referral partner. You've got a database of referral partners that you really need to grade out. Like, some of them may be targets. Hey, I would love to be in business with this person. I think that's a different kind of campaign. Then you've got, hey, these are the referral partners that send me regular business. That's like a different kind of campaign. Then you've got some that send me business sporadically. That's a different kind of campaign. And I think the cool thing is whatever CRM you're using, which, by the way, one of my favorite posts on Facebook is, what is the best CRM? It's the one you're using, right?
If you're
using it, right? That's the best CRM. But, you got to take the time to build out what you want to accomplish based on some of those different pillars that we just talked about. Yep. And once you grade those, some people like to do the A, B, C, D method, and based on whether it's an A, a B, a C, or a D, is how often you're contacting those folks.
Sure.
But you got to have a plan, of who you're calling, why you're calling, what your message is going to be. I'll tell you, one of the ones that I used all the time when I was originating was I always did a lot of Friday calls. And my Friday call was pretty simple. It was, hey, John, it's Bryan over at VanDyk Mortgage. I hope that you've had an amazing week. Hey, the reason for my call today is just to let you know I'm available this weekend. I work when you work. So if you've got any general home loan financing questions, or if you have a buyer you need me to take a look at, let me know. I'll be available for you.
Yep.
That was one of the simple things I used to do with that is however many people are in my database, I'll use an even number. Let's call it 100. I could make that, if I made 10 of those every Friday, every 10 weeks, I hit that part of my database again,
Right.
And so that's a simple analogy or a simple way of hitting that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that. I think the plan is you have to have a plan. I think the mistake that a lot of us make is we're busy working in our business, not on our business. And to the point where we talk to many folks that have a time block in their day where they're going to make those outgoing calls regardless of how much business they have today. They're reaching out to their realtor referral partners, their past client database, and they're making that number that they've committed to. They're doing that must-do. Many of them, first thing in the morning, they're knocking those out, because that's your revenue generating activity.
Boom.
That you have to hit every week. So 60, 90 days out, you're going to have closings. You're going to be successful, and it's not going to drop off, and you're going to avoid the typical realtor LO cycle where you're working in the business, not on it.
Yep, correct. I'd say, John, you said something on a call recently, a Zoom call we were on together, and you were talking to a group of sales professionals. And I love what you said. You said, for those of you who keep notes on like a legal pad or in a notebook or whatever it is, it can never tap you on the shoulder, right? And that's the point of the CRM.
Right.
And having that plan is it's there to give you that shoulder tap.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
And to the point back is being intentional to call your top 20 agents. let's say on a Monday to do a check-in, that doesn't mean because you have a deal with them. That's different. That might be a different day, a different time where you call on a deal that you have going. The call on Monday is a separate call, like a check-in call. Who else do you have for me?
Yeah.
I'm not going to call you about the Jones file. I'm calling you Monday to ask what else can I do for you, you and your team, and help you get somebody qualified.
Yeah.
Tuesday I'm going to call you on the Jones file.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good distinction between the two.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us think that we're busy, and when we say, hey, yeah, I'm talking to my agents, of course I am, right? You're probably only talking to 20% of your top agents, right? At any one time, let's say, 1 out of 5 have a deal working with you, and the other ones, if you're not intentional about it, you're missing them, and somebody else is making that call. As we know, it's early in the year, first quarter.
Yep.
So, most of us LOs have a business plan in place where January starts with what? Everybody's going to, commit to their calls. So it's time to get out there.
Yeah, it's like everybody commits to, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get in shape.
Sure.
January 1 rolls around, all of the salespeople are like, hey, I'm going to focus on
probably
these activities.
This year more than most because it's been quite a year in 2020 for us with business. So there's been probably a few folks that have done not what they should have been doing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So what do you want to tackle next?
So we hit the phones. You talked a little bit about database. Why don't you talk a little bit about like BNI groups, partner network,
some networking groups.
Networking
yeah,
groups.
so there's a lot of different networking groups out there. You mentioned BNI, and I think part of that is a couple of the folks that we interviewed, in this Top Producers podcast were members of BNI groups. I think business to business networking is important. Here's the crazy thing is, it benefits you more than just your business. For me, it's been a number of years. I was in a networking group like that. And those are the people I still do business with today.
Sure.
Like my financial planner is from that group. The guy who fixes my car is from that group.
Yep.
There's a number of relationships I built with people who now I trust that are in businesses that are, in my opinion, are high trust businesses. Like I might give anybody an opportunity to cut my lawn or be my landscaper. But there are certain things that I'm going to be a little bit more picky about who I choose.
Sure.
So, for me, networking, I'll give you a story. I got into a networking group. It was a great opportunity. And I was able to, because of a relationship I had, I was able to get into this group over 2 other loan officers who had applied to be in this group. So after a year, keep in mind, this is like early 2008 through 2009. I mean, the mortgage business isn't great.
Entirely different.
So I'm looking at my return on investment, not just in my time, but in finances too. And in the BNI group I was in, I had spent a significant amount of money, not just dues annually, but the monthly dues and what have you. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to renew when my membership is up here at the end of the 12-month period. And so I reached out to the person who was influential in getting me into the group, and I tell her the story. And she's like, hey, listen, before you make the decision, we come have a cup of coffee and then come have lunch. So I go have lunch with her. And she starts asking me questions like, well, how many of the other members of the group have you taken the time with to meet one-on-one? How many of the members of the group have you ever passed on a referral to? Asking me some of those questions. And as I really started to introspect, I was like, not as many as I should have. And what I started to realize is I'm the problem.
Right.
I'm not doing anything
to
build those relationships, because I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make in networking is it's about more than just going to that weekly meeting and giving your quick commercial, right? It's about the relationships that you develop there. And, one of the things they taught us was when you're sitting down to do a one-on-one with somebody in that environment is you always start with, what can I do to help you with your business? Can you educate me on how I refer somebody to you? And some of those questions. And what's going to naturally happen is when they're done teaching you and educating you on their business and how to help them, they're going to ask the same question, right? And you need to be prepared to answer that. So for me, that was when I started doing that, it made a huge difference. So my first year in that networking group, I got a number of referrals, but I didn't close a single deal. My second year, when I made a commitment to doing it the right way, which was doing the one-on-ones, making sure I was building relationships, finding a way to refer business to the other members of my group, when that happened, it became my number one referral source.
You probably were getting better quality leads at that point, is
Yeah.
my guess too.
Well, I mean, and I think too, in our profession, just like I said, I might hire anybody to be the landscaper, but our profession is one of those where people need to have
some trust.
Sure. And that second year was very influential for me. It became my my number one referral source ahead of any, like if I measured it against like a real estate agent, the number, and there was like 50, I think, people in my group. When I combined all of those referrals I got more referrals out of that group than I did any one real estate agent.
Yep. So, I mean, to segue what you just said, you hit something that, a couple of the guys that are involved in BNI groups specifically, every year the membership comes due, let's say it's January 1, and you have to sit back, analyze whether or not you want to continue with it, because it does require a great amount of time. But, in everyone we talk to that's involved in the group, when they analyze it, they're getting about 15 to 20% of their business from some of these networking groups at this point. Now, did that happen like Bryan the first year in the networking group? No. It's being consistent, much like making your phone calls or your past client calls, right? You're doing your check-ins, right? It's something that it's kind of like saving for retirement. I look at the analogy that the first couple of years, you're putting away a few dollars, right? And the growth of that money isn't substantial. So you start looking at maybe the quarterly statement. You're like, oh, okay, I made a few dollars. But as time goes on, you start to benefit, you reap the reward of those yields or the fruits that they harvest. Then I mean, you get a great amount of referrals at that point once you've been recognized as the expert in your field. Right, and build that reputation and earn their trust.
Yeah, I'll tell you some of the reciprocal things that happened for me out of that group. I mean, it's been 10 years probably since I've been in that group. There are members of that group that I still do business with.
Sure.
Not them sending me mortgage referrals necessarily, but they're the people that I go to that I trust for, if I need my air conditioner worked on my house or, some work done on my car. The other thing that happened was as people learned that I was in a networking group like that, people would call me and be like, hey, do you know anybody who cleans carpet?
Yeah, you became the expert.
And I became that, hey, somebody was looking for me. They were reaching out to me looking for referrals for people because they knew I was in a network with people who were, vetted to some degree.
Right. All right, so one of the things about the networking, I mean, you want to grade your past clients. I mean, just like there are those clients that are the A, Bs, and Cs, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like from your BNI and your networking group, you're the A. You're the person that's going to refer other people. You like to do that, right?
Sure.
So I would recognize that, and I know that that's something that you have available. And when I was originating, one of the things I would grade my past clients based on them referring business, not just their business, but their ability to refer friends to me.
Yes.
So I had one guy, one past client, and he was an A. At the time, I was doing Brian Buffini, right, 100 Days to Greatness.
Yes.
And it was working your database. So basically, you could generate 50% of your leads through your past client database, not from them needing to refinance necessarily, but for them to refer somebody else over to you to either buy a home and get financing or refinance. Yeah. So I had a guy one time I had done a loan for, and he was that A+. I mean, a true story, I think I did 6 or 7 loans after his purchase in the next 12 months.
Of his sphere of influence.
His sphere of influence. He was a general manager of a hotel over on Clearwater Beach. Okay. And he just had a phenomenal experience. And
you're a pretty great guy.
Rates were sliding down a little bit, so I had an opportunity, a great opportunity to save some people some money.
Yeah.
And boom, every 60 days, like clockwork, I could reach out to him and be like, "Hey, I owe you somebody." I mean, he was the guy that wanted to send you business. And then every year from that point forward, I mean, we'd get together, have a coffee, a couple times a year, and he'd always say, "Hey, I have a friend that's getting ready to buy." He'd come my way before he would go to a realtor, and then it was an opportunity for me to
send a referral to a real estate agent.
To a realtor. So
I mean, I think that's awesome. I think the other thing you talked about, like grading that. The other thing that I did is I was involved in more than one networking group, and so I think at one time in the height of it, I was involved in 3. I went to one that was at like breakfast on Thursdays. I went to one that was like lunch on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I went to one that was breakfast on Fridays. Now, they were all in different areas of town, so I wasn't like all in the same place.
Right.
What I would do, and then I'd also spent some time with the Chamber of Commerce, different things like that. But what I would do every year is I would evaluate of those organizations I was involved in, which ones were the biggest return on my investment. And I would always lop off the one at the bottom, like that one, and I would lop off that one at the bottom and go find a new one.
Right.
Just trying to continue to keep plugged in and building new relationships.
Yep.
And the interesting thing too is it's very important for those of you who are involved in networking like that. You need to be as specific as you can with the people you're building relationships in those groups with about what you are looking for, because when you get specific, those are the key words that they're gonna pick up on. So, like as an example, I wouldn't go to a meeting like that and say, hey, my name's Bryan, I'm with VanDyk Mortgage, and if you know of anybody who's thinking about buying or selling, or wanting to buy or refinance, think of me. I would get more specific and say something like, hey, my name is Bryan. I'm with VanDyk Mortgage. Hey, I am looking for an opportunity to get introduced to blah, 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 blah. And I might have given a real estate agent's name, hoping that somebody in that group would know that person who could make a warm introduction to me.
So you're expanding beyond the group.
Yeah, and so some weeks I would lay that out in my commercial and I would get nothing. And occasionally one would hit, and there was nothing better than a member of that group introducing me to the very person that I asked to be introduced to. Yep. Or I might say something along the lines of, especially during the summer here in the Tampa Bay area, a lot of military families move in. So I might be very specific about, hey, if you know of anybody that's a military family that's relocating either to Tampa or out of Tampa, during this, busy transfer window, think of me.
Yep.
So you just got to be specific.
Awesome.
Cool. So what's the last one we got?
Database. So did we talk a little bit about that? We've kind of talked grading. We've done the phone work and we've done the networking group.
Yeah, I think the database, what we talked about was, picking up that phone and hammering it. But I think the database, you've got to break down in a couple of different ways.
You've got to have the A, B's, and C's for sure. Something that I just heard recently on a call was, a lot of us now that we don't work our database the way we probably should, and you and I may have talked about it, but we have a database and it's maybe managed by somebody else. It's outsourced, right? So we take a business card somebody that we meet, we send it over to that person, they input it into whatever CRM you use, and then, you rely on them to set up campaigns, right? To stay in touch kind of via email. We have the ability to get the alerts when we should reach out by phone, by picking up that phone. And that's the important part, and I'm not sure that everybody quite gets that. Yeah. And I think we're at a point. It was great to have that that email going out, but email to me is I know what I'm like when I get an email, right?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like
Yeah.
like I'm not reading it.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting your message. So it requires the phone work to actually get front and center. People aren't reading emails. I'd rather if you hate the phone, shoot them a text. Say, hey, did you get the email I just sent you? I got a new cool program, or I want to get in front of you.
Well, I think in terms of email, I don't know about you, but one of the with email being on our phones nowadays, like I wake up in the morning
with 60.
I look at my phone, and I'll go to like say my personal email inbox, and overnight, like everybody has emailed me trying to sell me something.
Sure.
Well, it's easy from your phone to delete things really fast.
Yep.
Like it's easier
like
for me to delete them from my phone than it is for me to log in to whoever my email provider is and delete it, right?
Yep.
That's what I do. First thing in the morning, I delete them all.
Yeah, from
the night before.
Yeah, because they're just nobody needs to see the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
But they want to hear voices. I think now more than ever. The group that we work with, that we coach, picking up a phone, whatever industry we're in right now, we're all craving relationships. We've talked a lot about that. We're not able necessarily to see each other face to face. We're doing a lot of things via Zoom. And now more than ever, we need to be picking up a phone and just reaching out. And, you said it, all through this pandemic is just doing well checks. I mean, I think just like, I'm not even looking for business, but, I did a deal with you 3 years ago. I'm going through my database, and we haven't talked in a while. I normally would see you at the Board of Realtor events, and I miss you. And I was thinking about you. Something triggered me, and just find a way to check in and rekindle that relationship. And we're all dying for that, right? I mean, we're all at home, kind of somewhat isolated, more so than normal. And I think that's what people are craving.
Yeah, and I think too, you talk about, work in your database. You talked a little bit about grading. I think you also have to break it down. So, and by breaking it down, I mean there are different pillars of your business, right? So, some of it's past clients, some of it might be sphere of influence, some of it might be current referral partners, some of it might be target referral partners. I think you've got to have it broken. And I gave an example of 4. There could be 2. Partner. There could be 6. However many pillars your business has. But I believe you've got to break it down in pillars, and then you got to create that individual plan for each one of those pillars. And I mean, just saying it right now, it felt a little bit overwhelming.
I was just going to say,
right?
Yep.
And so think about how overwhelming it is if you don't have
a plan.
It broken down into a plan like that.
Yeah, you probably don't get started.
Well, you probably don't start, right? Yeah. And part of that is, I was saying like perfection is the enemy of done.
Right.
Right. And so in our haste to wait for it to all be perfect, we just do nothing. I think it starts with, hey, let's break it down. And by the way, it doesn't take nearly as long as you think it does to break those pillars down and then create just like whatever your individual plan is for that, And
right.
I know there's a lot of coaches out there in a lot of industries who teach hey, every day you call a different segment of your business. So like on Mondays, you might be calling your targets. On Tuesdays, you might be calling your current clients. On Wednesdays, you might be calling, your past, whatever. If you broke it down by days and you just made however, think about it. I mean, even if
you're talking calls.
Yes.
What if you don't want the phone? You got to call, right? That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, you got to call. You got to pick up the phone.
Yeah. So the message is our successful top producers are doing these 3 things.
Yes.
Every single day, every single week, every single year. And they have not, to one, deviated from those 3 things. Yeah.
It was that simple. The hardest part is actually the leverage piece.
Is knowing when it's time to make that hire, that we talked about with, I think, every single one of them, right? That they have a bigger than themselves team, and they leverage out a lot of the things that they can't or don't want to do, or they don't do well.
Yeah. One of the things I'll go back, and I think, the reason you and I wanted to put this podcast together today is, we interviewed, I think, 8 top producers. None of them, we didn't have time in 30 minutes to go deep with any of them, right? They hit a lot of stuff that was on the surface. And you and I have dug a little bit deeper on 3 of these today. But I say that to say, like, this is where John and I come in, right? And so, whatever business you're in, I know we're primarily talking to probably loan officers, real estate agents, but it doesn't matter what business you're in. John and I are here to help you. In any way that we can. Let us help you go deep. So you probably, if you've watched the podcast, and we appreciate you doing it or listen to it, you probably came across some ideas. You're like, hey, that sounds really great. I'd love to delve into that a little bit. If you're wondering how to get that started, we want to help you with that.
And message is consistency. Again, just don't try to reinvent the wheel. Use the systems that have been tried, true, and tested for years. Implement those and stick to that strategy. Yep. I mean, I think you'll find that it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anything else we want to add, John?
No, I think we covered it.
Covered it? All right. So thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. John and I had a great time today breaking down that top producer series. We hope you enjoyed it too. And if you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe, whether you're following us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. And as always, if there's anything that you need, the 2 of us, we're here to serve.